I could start this episode talking about jazz, about animation, but I think the anime already says it better than I ever could. The work, which will become a new genre itself, will be called Cowboy Bebop. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week, I'll be talking about the older brother of Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop. It is far and away, let's say, better known by the general public. So I think in a way I should have started by this, but also I always thought that Champloo had a bit more of my aesthetic than Bebop, but anyway, that doesn't really matter for the sake of this review. So before I start, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about most of the things that happen in the series, though I will choose not to review everything because in many ways I would not like to actually spoil anything to anyone that has not really watched this, because first off, I would be here for hours and hours trying to explain each and every episode because they are all different, and also because I think that the overall, let's say, in the big scheme of things, I think that it is an anime that it needs to be watched to actually grasp the greatness that it has, and for that reason I will not be spoiling everything really. With that being said, let's get to the story. So Cowboy Bebop is, oh my god, it is so hard. So before everything, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get to the stats. So Cowboy Bebop was originally an anime, originally aired in 1998, so from April 98 to June 98, with 26 episodes. We have also one movie that came out in 2001 and one other extra episode that I don't know if it was a bonus somewhere, but we have the extra. This review will not cover either of those. The studio that made it was Sunrise, so the same guys that did Gundam, and as most important, let's say the most prominent staff is Shinichiro Watanabe, who, as I already said, also did Samurai Champloo in 2006, and I think that his latest work was Lazarus, I think in 2024 or 25, so he's still at work sometimes. And I have to, and those are the stats basically. There's also a manga that came out before and a manga that came out after. There are two different adaptations, but for the sake of this review, again, only the 26 episodes of the normal anime. With that being said, I have to say that this is a doozy, and I have to also try my best to actually, let's say, get the message across that this came before Champloo. So whenever I do a comparison, we need to actually, let's say, figure that in most likely scenario, Champloo derived a lot of its ideas from here rather than the opposite. And let's say the DNA kind of shows in many ways. The shows are structured pretty similarly. So at the start of the anime, we have, I will get the number of episodes wrong, but either way. So for the first episode, we have our two main characters, Jet and Spike. Spike is your more, let's say, nimble kind of fighter and so on and so forth, where Jet is a bit of more of the brains of the operation, the mechanic, and so on and so forth. One of the things that is already striking from the get-go is that this anime has a really specific aesthetic that they went with, that was what they thought would be the future in 98, but also with a really big influence from that time. So it does like support and show a lot of that, what many call that Gainax effect. So then from the animation to the art, they have the same kind of really hand-drawn aesthetic, and really it is an old anime. It is from 98, so it has all the quirks from old anime, but also it transcends that because it is really, really well animated. It has so many details on all those animations. So from two spaceships coupling into each other to the way that each character in a scene moves, not only the main characters but also the extras and so on and so forth. It all culminates in such a really diligent work on both the animation and art front, and it has its own aesthetic as this really industrial kind of stuff mixed with a bit of future and a bit of the past, and it all really fits in, as it kind of begins a bit jarring in a way. We are more accustomed to either go super cyberpunk or super let's say far future, but this, I think it is a unique kind of aesthetic. Let's say it does borrow from a lot of the more mecha inclined anime from the 80s and 80s and early 90s, but also it shows a lot of the 98 influence on it. And me talking about this here will not really get this true, but it is, as I said at the start, it is something that you need to experience yourself to actually get what I'm saying. So we have these two main characters. So basically they are bounty hunters in the wide galaxy. So humanity has already conquered the stars, let's say, and moved on from Earth. And later on we get a whole lot more of world building with what happened to Earth, what happened in each of the planets that the guys go from and to. And from this first episode we get the idea that they are bounty hunters. They go around basically hunting people, and the one rule that goes throughout the whole anime to the very end is that the target of the bounty needs to be captured alive. This comes up a lot of times due to many things, and in many ways it is one of the things that for the most part, most prominently, they push a lot of the comedy of the show onto the fact that they do not do their work very well, if you catch my drift. But yeah, it is something that they use a lot for the comedy in the show at the end of most episodes, let's say. And from this point forward, we have the first episode with the first bounty. Then we get, I think the second episode is the introduction of the first of the additions to the crew, let's say. That is the Corgi Ain. That is a genetically modified Corgi that is super intelligent. So he cannot speak, but he does communicate with everyone in the ship and so on and so forth, and does a lot of different stuff throughout the series. It is a side character, but it is an important one. From episode 3 onward, we get the introduction of Faye Valentine. Not at this point she will join the crew, really. I think that goes towards, I think, the 5th episode, I think. But either way, the introduction of Faye Valentine marks the point where I think Cowboy Bebop really gets going. Because, and I need to get a real side note with this, I love the character of Faye Valentine in many ways. From the way that she starts as being this femme fatale, more of a really strong female character that actually does her stuff and really has that strong attitude. But also I think that more towards the middle to the end of the series, she really gets a really well done development, where when we learn about her past and her struggle, it kind of, I would not say like, it does not excuse her from what she does for the most part, but it is something that really adds to the mystique of the character. Not only that, but the fact that also she has a whole lot of really good quips. The voice work is splendid. I think that the voice work for all of the characters are splendid for the most part, the main characters at the very least. But she specifically, I really liked her. It is such a joy, and towards the end she becomes so cute in many things that I know that cute may not be the word that most people would use, the people that actually watch this, but I think that towards the end she becomes so cute, and in that way she is, I think, my favorite character in the whole series. And that is to say that I do have problems with Spike, because Spike's really dumb, specifically there's one episode where he's really dumb for no reason, and it just got to me, but I'm taking too long on this. So from episode 3 forward, we get the introduction of Faye Valentine, and later on her joining the crew, and she always gets this, she becomes like the third main character for a long time, because at this point in the last crew member we will only be introduced on episode 9. That is Edward, or Ed. That is basically the genius child, and Ed itself is such I would say unique a lot on this review, if that's not clear already, but Ed is such a different character that we have in any ways, and in many ways I think that she reminds me a lot of Mako from Kill la Kill, but the real grassroots version of her, because Ed, in nearly 100% of her scenes, she's talking absolute gibberish and just comes up with the solution for something random. And in that way, it's really interesting the way that she moves, the way that the character works. And I have to give kudos to the animation team, because the amount of weird stuff that she does alone, it is such a delightful thing to think that someone actually took their time to animate that amount of random stuff. It really feels, and this is a thing that it is a feeling, right? It's not something that I can prove or whatever, but I really feel like the people working on this had a good time with everything that they did. I think that these transpires, let's say, feeling that everyone, that the whole team that worked on this, be it animation, art, music, and so on and so forth, story, they actually had a great time with this, from head to toe, from beginning to end. It feels like a really well realized anime, and well, I'm talking in between the lines, but whatever. Then so we have these 5 people in this ship called the Bebop, and they go around hunting people and earning their living throughout the galaxy. For the most part, we go through few planets. We go to Earth, we go to Mars, we go to Europa, we go, I think Europa is not really a planet, it's a moon, but whatever, and so on and so forth. And then they go through, there's the whole thing of going through hyperspace and so on and so forth. There's a lot of segments of dogfights between spaceships, which are really nice to watch, and there's a whole thing, and that all goes around in many ways. And this is a thing that I think that this had an idea, and Shampoo would implement it better, because when we compare this to Shampoo had a distinctive goal from the very beginning, to find the samurai that smells like sunflowers. But this, we do not actually have a ongoing grand, let's say, major arc for the story. We just go from episode to episode, learning about one of their cases of hunting someone. Maybe the episode is around something really different. One episode is more focused on Jet, one is more focused on Spike, one is more focused on Faye, and so on and so forth. There are, I think, 2 that are specifically focused on Ed, because Ed is really weird as a character to actually write something about. Basically, her introduction and her backstory are really rushed in that way, but there's no like major thing that goes around all the anime, something that Shampoo would have. And for that reason, the episodes may feel a bit disconnected, some things may feel a bit strange from episode to episode, but it all comes back to basically the old, let's say, sitcom logic, that at the end of the episode everything goes back to normal. That is kind of true, but not really, because we can clearly see the progression of the story starting, I think, most prominently after the finale of what would be the first season. So episode 11, 12, and 13, I think they are the mark where the actual, let's say, major arc starts. Though the major arc wouldn't actually reveal itself that much because there are no like setups and stuff to actually get some kind of plot going. That being said, we have throughout the whole of the 26 episodes, we have a whole lot of different cases, a whole lot of different things that are drip fed to us. So the fact that Faye has a huge debt that she has to pay, but she has this almost a compulsion to basically spend all her money on the casino or some horse races or something weird, like just to bet, and then lose it all because she's unlucky. And this is something that they allude to a lot throughout the series, until the point that they actually reveal what her past is, and the whole thing kind of goes on from there. Though I will get to this a bit later, but anyways. And then we're fed to the fact that Jet, in his, let's say, past life before becoming a bounty hunter, he was a cop and he was a detective. And then we have the whole of, I think, 2 or 3 episodes all around the backstory for Jet. And then Spike is, let's say, the hero for the story, and he has the most time in the spotlight for fleshing out his backstory and so on and so forth. Though I wouldn't say that it is really well explored. Like, I'll get there when I get there. And from then on, we have this more backstory focused episodes. We have some different bounties and stuff that they go through, and some of them are more focused on the world building. And I have to shout out the world building that they did, the amount of detail that they bring to the table. It is something that really came to me, and I think I have to actually shout this out. I think it is one of my favorite episodes, not because of the theming or what happens in it, but in terms of philosophy of what they actually did with this. I think was really interesting. That was Heavy Metal Queen, episode 7, and it is such a different thing to actually see someone do. And this compounds my theory that Cowboy Bebop, at the end of the day, it is such a unique artistic vision to do an anime like this. Something that I want to compare it to Noir, though nobody actually watched that or even listened to my review, so it doesn't really matter. But it is such a different vision of what they should like portray, because in that one episode we have a whole lot of world building, a whole lot of emotional weight and emotional stakes in everything that they go through in that episode. And it shows a reference to a concept that exists in our time being translated into the future, and in that way it really becomes something that I think it is weirdly beautiful. Let's say it's really hard to actually explain this, but in the fact that they introduced the concept of truckers in space and the story that goes around it is really good, and it was one of the highlights for me. It's not really that much of a flashy episode, but it is something that really stuck out to me because it really feels like, yeah, this is a work of art. You don't need to actually understand what the hell is going on, because it is just to watch someone's vision. It is something that they realized that they wanted to do, and they went there and did it, and I think that's awesome in that way. Now, I have been glazing this for 20 minutes already, so on and so forth, but for the most part, that's about it for what I feel like it's really good about the series. From the animation, the fights, the hand-to-hand, the shooting, the whole thing, the character introductions to their emotions, to the tiny details. And this is a thing, in watching Cowboy Bebop, I feel much like watching, if you ever watched the Monogatari series, because they have little quips in Monogatari. They have little quips in terms of visuals, so you have to keep on watching and never take your eyes of the screen to actually get all the references, all the little jokes that they put in. And in a weird way, Bebop also has this because it has so much detail in all of its scenes, all of its interactions between characters. Most of the most dramatic scenes are silent, with only footsteps, maybe a gunshot or two, and it all comes down to visuals in that moment. And they actually go down to the detail of adding a little motion for fingers, a little motion for someone else in the background, and so on and so forth. It is really, really interesting that way. And I have to shout out, the whole of the OST for this thing is magnific. It's majestic. I can't really give one single word to actually do it, because it is so hard to actually try to corner this on only one thing. But the whole sound work on this, from the ambience to the insert songs that they give to the opening, oh my god, that opening, man. The opening is such an iconic thing. Much like a lot of people, I think, I listened to the opening before I even knew what Bebop was, and was just struck by how much it feels. It has the whole of jazz there, the energy, the rhythm, the whole thing. It's really, really nice. And talking about a bit of the, let's say, the things that in many ways they're different from here to Shampoo and vice versa. I think that in many ways this Bebop does not fit in the same, let's say, in the same mode that Shampoo does, because this here is unimpeded by its time, by its let's say, historic portrait, because it's talking about the future. So the guys that did it just went with whatever they wanted. So if they want a spaceport, they would draw a spaceport the way they do. If they want to destroy the Earth because of a calamity that happened 50 years ago, they would do it. If they want to, and this is a really tiny detail, but really, really interesting. Watching this with headphones on, I would not say good headphones are needed, but headphones that actually have the different sides set up. In one of the first episodes, when they're going through the hyperspace gate for the first time, in 1 year you listen to Japanese and English, and basically normal, like much like train station announcements or warnings. In 1 year you listen to Japanese and English, and the other year is like Chinese and something else that I couldn't get. And in that moment I was like, holy shit, who came up with this idea? Like, why would you take your time to go and spend resources to do something so minor? It's really, why? And it's really nice the way that they do it, why they do it, because that's the vision, that's the idea. And in that way, really, I really fell in love in this anime in this manner, because they actually went there and spent their time with detail, with everything. It feels unchained by anything that we have today, no corporate interest, no time schedule, no whatever. It really feels like an anime made to be an anime as art. And in that way, it's really nice. Now, I talk like this, and when I say this, I want to say that Shampoo had its restraints in the fact that it was a historical depiction of feudal Japan. So they had a limitation of what they could actually do and what they could actually show. But in here, they just went wild. The other thing that I would like to compare, as I already said, is the fact that Shampoo has an overarching plot where this does not, until the very, very end. I think that until episode 24, there's no overarching plot really. There's like a mini overarching plot, but no, not something realized. The real overarching plot goes from, let's say, episode 12, and then we only catch up to it on episode 25. With that being said, let me get a few more things. I think that for the most part, the characters here are more realized than in Shampoo, because Shampoo, I think that they fell too much in the more normal, let's say, framework of having the heart, the lancer, the hero, or the wild goose. in terms of Mugen. And here, I think that it is interesting to say that nobody here is actually a good person, and at the same time they all are in their own twisted ways, because in many ways when the 5 of the crew of Bebop are together, they become more or less a dysfunctional family. It is a point that comes up more and more towards the middle of the series, where Jet and Spike will get into an argument because Jet thinks that Spike's just going to kill himself, and then Spike does some dumb bullshit and it comes back to all tattered up and needs medical attention, but it still comes back. And in that way, I think that for the most part, I think the characters here, they carry more baggage with them, though the episodes here are less, let's say, less fulfilling than Shampoo. It's weird to talk that way, but I think that there are a lot of topics that I wanted Bebop to stay more than one episode only on it. I think that some episodes, they all feel really quick and they all explain stuff really well, but at the same time it feels really, I don't say rushed, but it feels like we have this time restraint and we can't really dive into a weird note that someone said, some detail that we showed but not really expanded on, or something that seemed like the actual main theme, though it was a red herring. And it feels in that way that, at the very least, looking at both works, Bebop has better characters, let's say, has more developed, more interesting characters in that way, whereas Shampoo has more well-written episodes in a way. Not that Bebop's are not well-written, but it is, I think Shampoo has a better focus on the characters when we're talking about episodes and the plot, the different plots that they go through, whereas I think that Bebop does not have that much grace when talking about, let's say, 50% of the episodes. They are not really character focused, they really go into one gimmick or one specific situation, not really to dive deep into the characters. But either way, this anime is awesome. The whole thing, again, the music alone is something that really pushed me to watch this. I think that in many ways I was okay watching any of the episodes here. They are really, really well done. All the animation's great, all the weird quirks that they find, the people that they interact with, be it the contacts that Jet has in the police, Spike's contacts in the mafia. There's one episode that they do as a reference, and they'll do a whole lot of references. There's one episode that they do as a reference, I don't know which film, but it's basically Alien. That it all comes down to the fact that someone forgot food in the fridge for a whole year, and that's when the thing like creates legs and starts running around the ship. It's really interesting that way, and you do it in a more horror style. It's really, really interesting, the ideas that they have. And for the most part, I think that's it. So before I start rambling about random stuff, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in, and I hope you stick around for next time. Bye.